Today we're going to work with models of inverse and joint variation problems. A lot of this are word problems, so I'm going to try to walk you through of how we can get these word problems, and then tomorrow we'll spend some time graphing. So first off, we're going to have two types of models. One will be what we call a direct variation, and one will be an inverse variation. So we have this constant a, and a is just a constant, which means that a will be a number, like 3, or a could be 5. A is just a constant. And if you have a direct variation, direct means multiply. So have a y equals a to the x type formula. And two variables show inverse variation. So we're going to look for the word inverse. And they are related by y equals a. Instead of a times, inverse means we're going to have a division. And what are a and x and y? We'll be given those in word problems. But one of the first things you'll have to do is just see what kind of model you fit in. Okay, so bold these. And how are you going to know if we have a times or an a divided by? We'll look for these keywords like direct or inverse. Pause, make sure you have those notes up to date. So one of the first things that you'll be asked to do is to tell whether or not a function is direct or indirect. So you want to fit them into a model that looks like what we just talked about. So is it a model of a times x, or is it a y equals a divided by x? So you can see each one of these. B is set for a y equals, but the other ones are not. So you want to make these solving for y. So how do I solve for y? I divide by x on both sides. So we can see this model is more like the indirect or the inverse model. If we solve for y in part B is already solved for y. So we have a plus, and our only direct and indirect is a times or a divide. So this would be a neither. And then part C, it looks like a divide, but remember we have to solve for y. So if we solve for y, we would multiply both sides by 4, and we can see this is a y equals 4 times x, so it looks more like the direct variation. Okay. So put pause, take a guess at your 2a, b, and c, and then hit play and see if you're correct. So the first thing that you want to do with each one of these is set them to a y equals. So this is a minus 3, so we would add 3x to both sides. You can see that this will be a direct. Solve for y, so I'd multiply both sides by y, and I'd get yx or xy equals 3. Solve for y, I get y equals 3 divided by x, so this would be an indirect. Solve this for y, we would subtract x, and this would be a neither. The next segment, we're going to I'll be giving you some answers, and you'll have to solve the equation. So in example 3, we're given a word problem, and the 4 steps are to translate into English, the English into math. We want to solve for A, rewrite the equation, and then find what it asks for. So we've been doing a lot of things this year with Lit Lab and reading. So let's see if we can translate English. The variables x and y vary directly, okay? And remember in our previous 2 examples, directly means times. So when we see a y directly, we're going to put in the model y equals a times x. The next step that we will do is we will solve for x given 2 conditions. Solve for a. So I have y equals a 48, A we don't know, and X it says is 4. So how would I solve for A? I divide both sides by 4. So in this example, A would equal 12. And then we rewrite the equation. That looks like y equals, instead of A being A, we'll put what A equals, and we'll go back to just putting x and y. So then it says write an equation that relates x and y. Did that. And now find y when x equals negative 2. So what is y going to be? If x equals negative 2, y will equal a negative 24. So this is an example just using x and y. In a minute, we'll talk about air pressure is directly related to the temperature, or wind is directly related to the time of year. And we'll put some other different words in it, but I just wanted to give you an example of what we do when we just have x and y. The steps for the indirect are the exact same thing, but we just have to be a careful reader. So the first thing we'll do is translate into English. So when we read a word problem, one of the things that you're going to want to do is come up with a model. So x and y vary inversely. That means indirect. So we would have a y equals a over x. The next thing we do is we substitute in what we're given. So we're given y is equal to 15. We don't know what a is, but we can find that in a second. And x equals a 5. So using good algebra, to solve for a here, we would multiply both sides by 5. So a equals a 75. So again, think of a as being a constant. Whatever word problem that we're dealing with, that a is going to be different. And in some cases, you might see even a k for constant being used instead of a. Our book uses a, but that's just, it can be any variable. Step 3, we will rewrite the equation. So I want you to say y equals a, which is a 75, all over x. And then I can answer any question that we're asked. What do we ask here? Find y when x equals a negative 10. So how can I find y when x equals a negative 10? We plug it in, and we simply solve. So what does y equal? Y would equal a negative 7.5. That is basically the understanding of inverse and direct. Sometimes we get a little bit more complicated with jointly, and I'll do example 5 with you, and then you'll have enough to do on your own. Okay, again, let's read through example number 5. Reading through means that we'll try to read the problem a couple different times, get the idea of how we translate, and if it says jointly, that means we're going to join together. So variable z, varies means equals, so we'll say equals. Jointly means that we'll join those two variables together. Okay, so again, where does that a come from? A is the constant that we'll have with these types of problems. So translating the English will be step 1. Step 2 is we will plug in what we're given. So z equals a negative 75. We don't know a. X is equal to 3, and it gives us y is equal to a negative 15. So let's just do some side math over here. So what do we get? We get a negative 75 equals a times a negative 45, because 3 times 15 is negative 45. So a will equal negative 75 divided by negative 45. And again, these are just numbers, so they don't have to come out whole numbers. This would be a positive 1.66 repeating. If you change that into a fraction, you should get, this is 1 2/3. So if we change it into a fraction, we should get 5/3 is our A. We'll rewrite our equation by saying Z equals, what is A? A is our 5/3. X we don't know, and Y we don't know. So this step is the one that you guys will probably forget to do because you don't want to rewrite. You just want to find Z. And how do we find Z? If A is equal to 5/3 and X equals a 2 and Y equals a 6, we just plug them all in, and we get 10 times 6 divided by 3. Z would equal 20. So the next example are examples where all I want you to do is translate. Again, I'm going to pause the tape, try to translate, look for keywords, and then press play after you try and see if you got them correct. You'll want to look for keywords here. So Y varies. Varies means equals. Inversely tells you that we have a divide problem. Problem B, Z varies. Varies means equals. Jointly means that you'll put all of those together or join them together with a multiplication. Y varies. Y equals. Inversely means that we'll have a divide. And this time, be a careful reader, it says the square of x. So that is x squared. Z varies. Z equals. Directly means a times with y. Oh, but inversely with x. So inversely means a divided by, and then we'd have an x. So we don't have to have two a's here. We would just have z equals a y, because that's direct, and inversely with x. Finally, it doesn't always have to be a y equals or a z equals. This time it's an x varies jointly with t and r. So we join t and r together, and inversely with s means that we would divide by s on the bottom. So these word problems can get kind of tricky, but remember, look at your key words. Vary means equals. Inversely is a divide by problem. Jointly means that we'll join those together with multiplication. And directly is also a multiplication problem.